The UDHR stands for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You saw that in that video. Now, let me just say this about this. If you are going to be a member of the UN, the United Nations, you have to sign this document. You can't be in the UN unless you sign this document. And every state that is a state has signed the UN Charter and has signed this document. So, in other words, all states in the world agree on this particular thing. They all use the language of human rights. They all have a very specific set of human rights that they agree are human rights, and that's in that copy that from the Donnelly book that I have added on here that you can look at. And again, I ask you to look kind of through that list and say, are there any on here I don't agree with? The United States has signed on to this. Any here I don't agree with? Are there any here I do agree with, or that should be added that aren't on here? I'll give you one that's a I don't want to say questionable one, but in the United States, we don't necessarily agree with this, and that is the right to work. Do you have the right to work? It's right there in that document. A lot of those things you read that list, you say totally, 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 but then you get to the right to work and you say, wait a minute, there's unemployed people in the world, or in the United States. Does the United States have an obligation to provide work for them? And the United States does not think that way. So there are some of these on that list that are sort of, at least from the United States and Europe, more essential than others. But we're going to see that's not really the way that we talk about this. So this document is signed by all countries that join the United Nations, and this is the model for human rights globally. So the model itself, I just want to talk about four aspects of it and how we talk about this. So the Universal Declaration essentially says the human rights are this set. You saw that list. And there are some key things about this that are going to be true. So number one, they're tools for implementing larger values. And remember what those values are? Classical liberalism, your ability to choose your own good life, because that's what we mean by being human. They are individual rights, not group rights. You have these because you're a human being. You don't have them because you are a member of this, because you're a U.S. citizen, or you don't have them because you're a male or because you're a female. You have them because you are an individual, a human being. That's a really important piece about this. Yeah. Okay. Number three, they're all interconnected. In other words, that list, you have to accept that entire list or you accept none of them. And so that's a really important thing as well. This is not a salad bar you can go through and say, I like this right, I like this right, I like this right. We're going to ignore these other ones, but we like these. You have to like them all or like none of them. And then the last thing about it is they are universal. And what we mean by this is that they're held by all humans everywhere at all times. If I'm in San Diego or if I'm in Bangladesh, it doesn't matter. I have the same set of rights in both places. And what about, let's go back to the past. Let's go 200 years ago when there was slavery in the United States. Well, the way that we talk about this then is those slaves back in the 1800s had the right to be free. They weren't free, and that was a wrong decision made by governments. It was wrong in all these ways. It wasn't just a different time. It was that human being was a human being, and because of that, they had the same rights that I have. So we need to aspire to a world without slavery, even though there was times where there was slavery in the world. They're held equally by all humans because all humans are equal. Equal people get equal rights. And the way we think about this today, and this is a very new idea in the world today, is that all human beings are equal to each other. Like, just think about, we don't have to go that far back before we would say men are not equal to women. All men get the same set of rights, and all women get the same set of rights, but the men may have a different set than the women. Or a racial argument where this race gets a set of rights, that race gets a set of rights, but they might not be the same set of rights. That's not how we talk about this today. Today we talk about this, that all humans have human rights because all humans are equal. And that's a very new idea in the world. One that we would accept, at least in the West. We would say, that's absolutely true. I don't even know how to argue against that. And yet it's incredibly, incredibly new in the world. And part of that goes back to how we talk about what human rights are and how they are provided. All right, like I said, you're gonna actually dig deeper. We're not gonna go too much more into the philosophy and theory of this whole thing. I want you guys to see how this plays out in real life. What are the human rights in specific contexts? What are some of the human rights violations that are happening in the world today? And how does even our language about human rights and how we talk about this, how does that help us create a world that we think is more fair, more just, and allows for human beings to actually be human beings? So you're going to pick one of the reports from the Human Rights Watch that I've listed on Canvas here. Definitely take a chance to look at all the titles to find a title that is most interesting to you, because it's a pretty long reading assignment. You're going to read the summary, and then you're going to skip the section on methodology unless you really are interested. But then you're going to read sections 1 and sections 2 of that report. I think they all have sections 1, sections 2. If not, just read like the first half of it. And then you can just skim the rest of it. And again, you're just reading to try and figure out not just like what the specific story is right here about this particular human rights violation in this particular place, but also how does the language and the vocabulary of human rights, the idea of human rights that we have, how does that help bring about a world that we think is more just, more fair? And then you're just going to have a discussion following that. So I hope you enjoy this reading. I like these reports, not because I like the topics, but I like that there is a way to think about how to make the world a better place. All right, I'll see you guys next week.